Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and welcome back to the NFL edition of Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the football games for Sunday and Monday for Week 4 of the NFL season. If you like what you see, make sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe. Put your football picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets in the NFL, college football, or Major League Baseball, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. There's also a link in the description. Alrighty, here we go. Coming off a nice week in the NFL, here are the games for Week 4. First up, we go to the NFC South as the Falcons host the Saints. We're going to see the Falcons as a small home favorite. Total is right around 42 points. Now, the Saints last week took their first loss of the season, and it was a close game. I mean, they were honestly looking pretty good towards the end of that one. Dallas Goedert makes that big, play and yards after the catch, and then Saquon Barkley punches it in for the touchdown to take the lead for Philly. Derek Carr's interception clinches the win for Philadelphia. But, I mean, honestly, in that game, the Saints were really outgained. I mean, 460 to 219. They were, in the plus column yet again in the turnover battle, but still a little bit concerning there. Only 12 first downs, and they really didn't run the ball too well. And now we know Kamara's a little bit banged up. We'll see if he's going to go. More than likely, I think he will play, but a little bit concerning. Definitely the weakest performance by far for New Orleans this season. Now you go on the road. This is a series that home team has done pretty well recently. They've covered the last three. Last year, these teams split the season series. The home teams got the better of each other and covered the number of courts in those games. And, I think the Falcons are playing rather well. I mean, the first week it was a tough performance against Pittsburgh's defense, but they played well against Philly, earned the road victory. And then, against the Chiefs, they were, a potential or a controversial pass interference call away from getting the ball at the 1 yard line, first and goal, and, potentially earning, or taking the lead and earning the W. So, it was a very close game against the Chiefs, even though they didn't cover. And I still think I like what I'm seeing from the Falcons offense. Kirk Cousins was not playing well in week 1. He's gotten better as the weeks have gone on. And I think that we see the Falcons win this game and cover the short spread. So give me the Falcons in this one. I'll lay the points. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams taking on the Chicago Bears. The Bears are a 3-point favorite and totals right around 41.5 points. Now, you're going to hear me talk a lot about the underdogs that won outright last week. There was a ton of them, and how they're in pretty big letdown spots here in Week 4. And I am fading a good amount of these teams in Week 4, and the Rams are one of them. I mean, when you look at the Rams, beyond just the upset victory as a 6.5, 7-point dog at home, you took down your division rivals in the San Francisco 49ers, who happen to be the defending NFC champions as well. And not only was it a win against your rival, it was a comeback victory. I mean, the Niners were up big for a majority of that game, and they were up 24-14 midway through the fourth quarter. The Rams earned the miracle win and comeback win, 27-24 on a time expiring field goal, basically 2 seconds left to go with the field goal there from Cardi. So this is a huge win for the Rams, but it's a miserable letdown spot for them in this game. And you look at the Bears last week. They didn't they only put up 16 points. The offense is looking to get going, but I still think it was their best offensive showing by far, because they put up 395 total yards, 26 first downs. Williams had over 300 passing yards for the first time, and the previous 2 weeks he wasn't even close to that. So I think they're taking strides, and while they haven't been able to get the run game going, you face a Rams defense that's giving up over 5 yards per carry on the ground to opposing rush offenses. So I think the Bears offense has a big week, their biggest week of the season thus far. I think the defense holds up, and I like the Bears to win this game. We're getting a great price because of the Bears' recent struggles and because of that Rams upset win. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings taking on the Green Bay Packers. We're going to see the Packers as a small favorite at home, total right around 43 points. Now, the Vikings are one of the only undefeated teams in the NFL right now. Not a lot of people saw that coming, especially when you look at the schedule, having to play the 49ers and the Texans, 2 playoff teams from a year ago. But the Vikings are playing very, very well on both sides of the ball. Sam Darnold has been more than a game manager. I mean, he's been really solid, hitting about 68% of his passes, an 8-2 touchdown to interception ratio. We know the Vikings' ground games work well, and their defense has been one of the best in the league. So they're looking pretty good right now. However, now you go on the road in a really tough environment at Lambeau Field in a divisional game. And while the home teams didn't cover last year, they're still 4-2 against the number in the last 6 meetings. So they've done pretty well overall in the last couple of seasons. And I think that this is a good spot for Green Bay. They played very well under Malik Willis. We'll see if Jordan Love gets back to the field this week. It's definitely trending, a lot better than it was last week. It looks like he could return, but whether it's Willis or Love, I still like this Packers offense in terms of the weapons that it has. They've ran the ball so well this season, over 5.5 yards per carry. the Vikings run defense is going to be put to the test by far in this game. It's been excellent so far, but I think Green Bay is still going to be able to move the ball on the ground. This Green Bay defensive thing is also underrated. It's improved as the season's gone along. 8 sacks last week against the Titans. Excellent work there from Green Bay. This is going to be one of the best games of the week in my opinion, but I like the Green Bay Packers to prevail. We're getting a really good price because of the 3-0 start from Minnesota. Give me Green Bay in this one. Next up, we see the Pittsburgh Steelers taking on the Indianapolis Colts. We're going to see the Steelers as a small road favorite. Total right around 40 points, and we know the Steelers are off to an amazing start to the season defensively, holding their opponents to under 10 points per game through the first 3 weeks and only 230 total yards per game. The run defense has been excellent, 3.5 yards per carry. They're getting pressure on opposing quarterbacks with sacks on over 11% of their opponents' passing plays. The defense could not have drawn up a better start to the year. However, I think this offense is also a little bit underrated. I mean, last week they put up 20 points and 346 total yards. They started to get going a little bit more in the passing game, and I think against the Colts defense that has struggled this year, both against the run and the pass, the Steelers are going to put up probably the biggest performance of the season offensively. I think the Colts also, on the flip side, though, with Anthony Richardson, who's very volatile, can certainly make the big plays, sometimes the big mistakes, but we've seen him throw the ball. He's hit a few 50-plus yard touchdown passes this year. I think the Colts can find a few big plays to get us over this total. This total is set way too low, in my opinion. It's because of this, great start for Pittsburgh's defense, but I think we see both teams start to get going here offensively, and we soar over the number at 40 points. Next up, we see the Denver Broncos taking on the New York Jets. We're going to see the Jets as a 7.5-point favorite. Total is right around 39 points. Now, the Broncos were our play of the week last week, and we took them plus the points and on the money line, and it was a blowout win for Denver, and it wasn't the most popular play, but they got the job done, and it was 26-7 the final. This week, however, I am fading the Broncos in this game. I do expect a bit of a letdown. Now, Bo Nix definitely had his best week by far. I mean, he looked like a completely different quarterback. He looked like the quarterback that we saw in preseason. And I think going forward, he could be, him and Daniels right now leading the way in terms of this rookie class of quarterbacks. But I think this is a tough matchup for him because the Jets defense has really stepped it up after a lackluster week 1 performance. They've been much stronger the last 2 weeks, and they've won 24-17 and 24-3. Their defense has stepped it up. I think on the road, second straight road game for Bo Nix in this offense, I think they do struggle quite a bit. And I like the fact that the Jets' pass rush has been excellent. 11 sacks the last 2 weeks combined. They've earned sacks now on over 16% of their opponents' passing plays. I know a big part of that was because of the Patriots and their offensive line injuries and issues, but still, this Jets defense on paper was the real deal going into the season. It was surprising to see them struggle in week 1, but they've definitely improved the last couple of weeks. The offense has also been there. I mean, over 400 yards of offense last week. Aaron Rodgers looks, very strong at the quarterback position. Their run game hasn't really hit its stride, but I think it will eventually. And the Broncos, you can run on this team. I mean, even the Buccaneers had 5.7 yards per carry last week. So I think that we see the Jets just make too many plays. I think the Broncos could keep up for a couple of drives, maybe a couple of quarters, but in the end, I think the Jets pull away, win this game, and cover the number. Next up, we see the Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to see the Bucs as a 2-point dog. The total is at 44 points. Now, the Bucs are my favorite team in the league, of course. I've faded them all 3 weeks thus far. I'm on their under in their win total. I've been a pretty big critic of Tampa Bay. However, I am changing my tune in this game. I think it's actually a good matchup for Tampa Bay, and I like them plus the points. And this is a revenge game for Philadelphia, so that is one thing, advantage-wise, situationally for the Eagles in this game. But I also think it's a clear letdown spot. I mean, a big comeback win against the Saints last week on the road, your second straight road game. And now when you look at the Bucs, one of the big reasons, or I would say the biggest reason that their offense has struggled the last couple of weeks is the pressure that Baker Mayfield is facing. He has been sacked 12 times in the last 2 games, 5 by the Detroit Lions and most of them by Aiden Hutchinson, and then 7 by the Broncos last week. And we know Baker is, as most quarterbacks are, their best when they have more time in the pocket. And, he just couldn't get going with guys like Mike Evans. That's why Evans, a downfield receiver, has not been able to get going the last 2 weeks because Baker has absolutely no time to throw it to him. It's been the Chris Godwin show out of the slot the last couple of weeks. I think with the Eagles, however, this is a defense that while in recent years has had a pretty solid pass rush, this year it's not the case. They've actually been one of the weakest teams in terms of pressuring the quarterback and earning sacks at least 4 sacks in the first 3 games combined. It's only 4.5% sack percentage on opposing teams' passing plays. So I think Baker's going to have a lot more time than he's used to in the pocket this game. I think he has a much better game in this one. I think Mike Evans, if he does play, he's banged up right now, but if he plays, I would take his over receiving yards, over receptions. I play him in daily fantasy. This looks to be a much better spot for Tampa Bay. And I think their run game was also sneaky good last week. They had a couple of trick plays that worked against Denver. Bucky Irving was also utilized a little bit more, and I'd like to see that. If they can get the run game going, they should have a fine day offensively. The question then becomes the defense. I don't love this Bucs defense. It is banged up, and long term, I don't think it's going to be a great defense. However, I think this is a good spot for them. The Eagles really struggled to finish drives last week. They put up 460 yards, but only 15 points. I think this is a spot where Tampa Bay bounces back, a letdown spot for the Eagles. Give me the Bucs in this one plus the points. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Carolina Panthers. The Bengals are a 4-point favorite on the road. Total's right around 46 points. Now, everybody's waiting for Joe Burrow and this Bengals team to figure it out and pick up a W. And the offense in Burrow, it wasn't their fault last week. I mean, they put up 436 yards, 30 first downs, and 33 points. That's usually good enough to win in the NFL week after week, but the defense really struggled, giving up those 38 points and not forcing a single punt against the Commanders in that game. And the question is, can Carolina, put up similar numbers like they did last week against the Raiders? I think Andy Dalton's definitely an upgrade. We saw that last week in terms of the quarterback play, but I'm also not ready to say that this Panthers offense is back and booming. I mean, it was 1 week against a pretty weak Raiders defense. I think this is actually a pretty good price we're getting now with Cincinnati because of their struggles and because of the upset win for Carolina last week. This is another clear letdown spot for the Panthers, and while they're playing back at home now, I still don't love them at this kind of price. I just don't think we're getting enough points with Carolina. Just think about it. If this was a week 1 game or even a week 2 game, the Bengals would be well more than a touchdown favorite in this spot. But because of their 0-3 start, we see them at less than a touchdown, less than 5 points. For me, there's value there. So give me Cincinnati in this one. I think they finally get their first win. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. I think it'll still be a rather competitive game, but I look for the Bengals to win this game by a touchdown. Next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Houston Texans. We're going to see the Texans as a 6.5, 7-point favorite. Total is right around 45 points. Now, this is another game similar to what we just talked about with the Bengals. Because of the 0-3 start for Jacksonville, we're getting an excellent price with the road dog. I think we're getting way too many points. I mean, this is a series. This is obviously a division rivalry in the AFC South. These teams play twice a year, and recently the home team has not fared well. They're 1-5 against the spread and straight up in the last 6 matchups the home teams are in this season series. So, I mean, I don't want to lay this many points with the Texans team that got crushed on both sides of the ball last week and has given up a sack on 10.7% of their passing plays. Their offensive line is not held up, and now they're struggling to run the football. Less than 100 rushing yards the last 2 weeks. This Jags defense, I think, steps it up, has a much better performance than last week. And their offense, I mean, the Jags were able to run the ball in that game, and they've ran the ball well, 5.4 yards per carry this season. They couldn't really focus on that ground game last week because they were down big early, but I think we see the Jags move the chains, move the ball well in this game, cover the spread, maybe earn the outright win, but give me the Jags plus the points. Next up, the Washington Commanders taking on the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are a 3.5-point favorite. The total right around 50 points, so it's the steepest of the week by a pretty good margin, and for good reason. I mean, these are two of the weaker defenses on paper in the NFL, and some two really potent offenses. We saw the Commanders put up 38 points last week. The Cardinals put up 41 a couple of weeks ago. But for me, I think the Cardinals defense has actually been a lot better than I expected. I mean, going into the year on paper, I thought this was the weakest defense by far in the league, but their run defense has held teams to under 4 yards per carry, and they held some tough teams in the Rams and the Lions to 10 and 20 points respectively, and that Rams game was an absolute blowout. So for me, this game comes down to who can make the most stops. I mean, the Commanders, while they won last week, they weren't really stopping much. They gave up 30 first downs like we talked about, over 6 yards per carry. Joe Burrow had his best week by far, and they gave up 33 points. So I think that the Cardinals defense has the better chance at making the key stops in this game, and that's why I like Arizona here at a pretty good price on a laying the spread. Next up, we see the San Francisco 49ers hosting the New England Patriots, and the Niners are the biggest favorite of the week, laying 10 points right now. Total is right around 40 points. I think for good reason, San Francisco is a 10-point favorite. We know the Patriots are, going into the season, they had one of the weakest offensive lines in football. Add to the fact that they have major injuries with that offensive line. We knew it wasn't going to be pretty. And on Thursday Night Football, we saw that only earning 139 total yards. They were sacked 7 times. They, just couldn't do anything basically offensively, only putting up 3 points. And now against the San Francisco 49ers, a great pass rush, a great defense. It doesn't look to be any easier for New England offensively in this game. The Niners have definitely disappointed last couple of weeks. They're, back-to-back losses, but I think this is a good bounce-back spot for them to pick up the win and pick up the blowout cover as well. So give me the San Francisco 49ers. I'll lay the points. Next up, we see the Browns and the Raiders. The Raiders are a 2-point favorite. The total is right around 36 points. And yet again, in my opinion, the odds makers are giving a lot of love to the Raiders. I mean, I didn't really understand the line last week. Yes, they took down the Ravens the previous week, but this is still a Raiders team that on paper has one of the weakest rosters, in my opinion, in the NFL. And I just didn't, understand why they were such a big favorite against Carolina. The Panthers win that game in blowout fashion, and here the Raiders are again as a favorite in this matchup. But I know the Browns have been lackluster, but this is still a very good defense for Cleveland on paper, and it's held up so far. You're getting pressure on the quarterback. Their run defense has been hit or miss, but I think this is a game where I don't think the Raiders do much of anything offensively. And I think the Browns, while they've been miserable offensively, giving up 8 sacks last week, and Deshaun Watson is not my favorite quarterback option by far, I think their defense is their best option, is their best offense in this game. They get some short field position opportunities, potentially force a couple of turnovers, and win this game in an ugly matchup. So I think we see a low-scoring game and an under, but I like the Browns to win this game. I'll take the 2 points. Next up, we see the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. We've got the Chiefs as a big favorite on the road, about a touchdown, 7.5 points, and the total is right around 40. Now, I do think this line could shift in a big way if Justin Herbert is cleared to play or if he's going to be listed as out. And, we'll have to keep track of that and see where the line goes. But for me, whether he plays or not, I do think there's value with LA in this spot, and I think we're getting way too many points. I know they're coming off a miserable showing against Pittsburgh last week, but they return home here. And for me, we talked about it earlier, the Falcons, I thought, played pretty well on Sunday night against Kansas City. And for me, the Chiefs' offense has yet to be as potent or as explosive as we're used to seeing. They've been held under 375 total yards each of the first 3 weeks. And Mahomes has made a good amount of mistakes. 4 interceptions already, a 5-4 touchdown interception ratio. Not what we're used to seeing from Mahomes. Travis Kelce's been pretty much irrelevant in the passing game this year, and Pacheco is still out, for long term. So the backup running backs, guys like Steele, have not really panned out so far. For me, I think the Chargers make enough plays in this game to at least cover the spread and potentially win this game outright. Next up, we have another primetime game with the Buffalo Bills as they travel to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. 8:20 Eastern on NBC, and the Bills, right now 3-0. They've had a couple of blowout wins the last 2 weeks against Miami and Jacksonville. They've looked very strong. The Ravens are 1-2 on the season. They lost on Thursday night to start the year against the Chiefs. Upset loss against the Raiders, but did have a nice bounce back week last week against the Cowboys on the road, earning the victory. And for me, while the Ravens are 1-2, their offense has been just as impressive, in my opinion, as the Bills has this season. Baltimore's putting up 430 total yards per game, 6 yards per carry on the ground, and a lot of that's because of Lamar Jackson, but still, Derrick Henry's having a great start to his season. The offensive line has held up very well. The defense on the other side, while the secondary has struggled at times, they've had one of the best run defenses in the NFL, holding each of their first 3 opponents to well under 100 rushing yards and 2.8 yards per carry. So for me, while the records may look like Buffalo is the much better team, I think these teams are very, very even, and I honestly give the edge to the Ravens, especially as the home team. So I'm going to roll Baltimore in this game, lay the points. I think, because of the Buffalo 3-0 start and their blowout win last week on primetime, they're overvalued in this game. I think the Ravens should be more than a field goal favorite, so I'll lay the points in Baltimore. Next up, the first of 2 Monday night games for September 30th. We've got the Dolphins and the Titans in this one. Now, preseason on paper, this didn't look to be too bad of a matchup, but now we see the injuries and the performances we've seen so far from these two teams. A combined 1-5 record doesn't look to be the best game on paper. I think the second game will be a lot more entertaining, but this is still a game where I think the Dolphins, while their offense has suffered the big-time injuries at the quarterback position, I think they have enough playmakers there to win this game, and I think their defense is honestly underrated right now. They made a couple of mistakes early on in Seattle against the Seahawks last week, but outside of those mistakes, their defense held up quite well, and they actually gave their offense plenty of chances to get back in that game. And against a Tennessee offense that's done basically nothing this year, 16 points per game. They're -7 in the turnover battle. They've been sacked 16% of the time on their passing plays. Their run game's been inconsistent. I think Miami's defense has a strong week. I think the offense makes enough plays to win this game and cover the very short spread at home. So no matter if it's Skylar Thompson or Tim Boyle or Tyler Huntley, I think the Dolphins will be fine in this game offensively. Give me Miami in this one. I'll lay the 1 point or take them on the money line. And the final game for week 4 in the NFL, we've got the Seahawks and the Lions. The Lions are a 3.5-point favorite. Total is at 46.5 points. Now, I know the Lions have one of the best offensive lines and honestly offenses in the NFL in general. So we do see rather steep totals in a lot of their games, but I think this total is too steep, and I like the under in this one. I think this Lions defense is underrated, and we've talked about the pressure that Aiden Hutchinson's gotten on opposing quarterbacks. I think it's Geno Smith. That's going to be seen quite a bit in this ball game. You know, the Seahawks, I just mentioned about the Dolphins defense last week. It made a couple of big mistakes with a couple of big plays early in that game for Seattle, but outside of those first couple of plays, the Seahawks offense didn't really do too much the rest of the way, and they had plenty of opportunities and good field position to put up a crooked number in that game. They only put up 24 points. Now on the road against Detroit, I think the Seahawks offense struggles. And on the other side, when you look at this Lions team, we know they run the football very well, but the Seahawks run defense has been strong to start the year. It's going to force Jared Goff to be in some tough passing downs. And so far, Goff has been a little bit shaky at the quarterback position. He's had 4 interceptions to only 3 touchdowns. So I think we see a low-scoring, a little bit ugly game in this one, and I like the under in Detroit-Seattle. And that's it. Those are the games for Week 4 in the NFL. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Put your football picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.